did the Dolphins prove they are legitimate contenders in the AFC? And you know what? I would love to do the honors here because one thing I like about this Dolphins team and to answer the question, yes, they are legitimate contenders. I love the defense because they are scrappy and opportunistic. I want to focus on defense right now. I feel like I talk a lot of offense. Claire, I'm an offensive guy. I love offense. I could watch offense all day. But I want to stay focused on defense because, believe it or not, Zach, when we had our show and we dropped the graphics, I had Miami winning the division over Buffalo. Now, I would admit, time passed. I backtracked a little bit. Still had them a playoff team, but I backtracked. I copped out. I'm not going to lie, I copped out. But at the same time, the graphics is over there, so it's still going to make me look good. There was a feeling that I had when it came to this team. When you look at the Dolphins, Zach, when you look at the last 2 years, they always had a form of dominance for a stretch. Haven't been always able to keep it together and piece it together. But 2 years ago, 5-2 at one point. And then they started to sputter and lose a little steam going into the playoffs, which they didn't ultimately make. Then last year, although they started all bad, 6 straight losses. I think it was like 0-6. They won 7 straight after that. It's hard to win 7 straight games. Actually, more harder to win 7 straight than to lose 6 straight. In the NFL, we talking about here. It's so hard to win 7 straight games. So I looked at those stretches and I'm saying to myself, they have moments where they look like one of the best football teams in the National Football League. But what was missing? And I said to myself, what was missing was probably the confidence of Tua and the coach's confidence in Tua. But I promise defense, I'm going to come back to that take in a few minutes. Defensively in this game and throughout the season, they going to give up yards. They're not a shutdown secondary, right? They gave up 497 yards in this game. But when they need stops, they always come through. When they need turnovers, they always come through. You know what was impressive about that comeback against the Ravens 2 weeks ago? It was not that they was down 28-7 and Tua just had this miraculous performance and it was his coming out party. No, it was the fact that they stopped Lamar Jackson that many times to allow Tua to win the game that way. It was the fact that in this game, right against the Bills, third and fourth quarters, the Bills had like 10-minute drives. Guys was gassed because of the heat. And yeah, I know they play in that stadium. I get it. But heat affects everybody. Weather affects everybody to some capacity, right? And the fact that they had guys dropping down like flies and they were getting dashed and the defense should be tied out there on a football field. But yet, when they needed 2 red zone stops, they got it. That's why I believe this Dolphins team is a legit AFC contender because that defense, yes, they're going to have their flaws, but they're great where they need to be, which is not breaking, but making sure you give your quarterback as much opportunities as possible to win the game. And yeah, they start up slow, but when you have a defense as the Dolphins, and Claire, I'm not letting them off the hook. They got to start faster, but I like what I see primarily from the defense, and that's why the Dolphins are contenders, in my honest opinion.
Yeah, so you made a lot of really good points about the Dolphins, and I'll get into them shortly, but I had a few thoughts on the Bills, actually, to start off this one. And I'll start by saying this. A lot of people going into this season, we spoke about it all offseason, how improved this AFC conference is with all of the moves made in the offseason. And even with that being said, it seemed to me, and I don't know about you, Lil, but everyone was picking the Bills to either come out of the AFC or win the Super Bowl. And then weeks 1 and 2 happen. They go to LA and have an awesome ass-kicking win over the Rams. They do the same thing against the Titans on Monday night. They win 41-7. And people are talking about this team like they're the 2007 Patriots. And as impressive as those 2 wins were, especially with what we saw last year from Buffalo, I was just wondering, like, is this sustainable? There is no doubt that when the Bills are on and when they're playing their best football, yeah, they're really hard to beat and they probably are the best team in the NFL. But we have no evidence that this team could put together a consistent 4 or 5 game stretch of great football, because last year they would have some games where they looked great, they looked unstoppable, and then they would have other games like against the Jaguars where they were held to 3 points, or in the opener last year against Pittsburgh where they couldn't score, they lose that game. And it's interesting because I think there was a scenario in this game where the Bills could have lost with all of their injuries in the secondary, right? Unfortunately, Micah Hyde announced he's out for the season. Jordan Poyer doesn't play. Tre'Davious White, he hasn't played yet this year. Could have been a scenario in this game where Tua, just like he did against Baltimore, threw 6 touchdowns again, and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are out here just cooking the Bills secondary. And if Miami would have won like that, I wouldn't have really have felt that worried about Buffalo, because it's like, oh, their secondary's hurt. We expected them to do that. But Buffalo lost this game because their offense got stuck in the mud when they were controlling really the majority of the game. They had a 20-play drive that resulted in 3 points, which was then followed by a 17-play drive that resulted in no points. But the real reason why Buffalo lost was because they did not play good situational football. At the end of the first half, Josh Allen almost throws a pick six because on the snap before, it was weird. He tried to spike it, but he fumbled the snap and he almost threw an interception because of it. And then they have 1st and goal from the 2 later in the game. And they can't run the ball. I'll get into that later, but they get stuffed 3 times. And then Josh Allen one-hops a wide open touchdown pass. And then the Bills get super fortunate. They're down 4, and we see that crazy punt in the end zone. I don't know if anyone had a better day on Sunday than Mark Sanchez after that, especially maybe Dan Orlovsky later in the game. But I don't know what that was, that butt punt for a safety. It's a 2-point game. So Buffalo, with a guy that could be the MVP of the league, a guy a lot of people are saying is the best quarterback in the NFL right now, 133 left. The Bills are down 2, and he can't even get them into field goal range after they've been dominating on offense the whole game. And the Bills, one thing I've noticed about them, when they win, they blow their opponents out. It's never close. But when they're in close games, they don't win. They're 0-8 in their last 8 one-possession games. And all of their wins the last 2 years, as good as they've been, have just come when they're blowing teams out. And I think this team just has to learn how to win a close game late, because as good as Josh Allen is, he can't be 100% of your offense. He threw 63 passes. He gets sacked 4 times, and then he runs the ball 8 times. That's 75 plays for Buffalo that Josh Allen either threw or ran the ball, which is too much. You're going to get him killed. That's not sustainable. And this team doesn't have a running game. Like Devin Singletary, 9 carries for 13 yards. Zach Moss had 1 big run, but that was about it. And I'm just worried that Josh Allen is either going to get super banged up, or that this team, they need to learn how to win close games, because when you're in the playoffs and when you face adversity, that's where champions are made. That's where the money's made. And that's my thing with Buffalo. The one reason why I wasn't trusting them to just roll through the regular season and just beat up on the AFC and come out of the Super Bowl was because I haven't seen it. They need to show me they're capable of winning big close games on a consistent basis. And as I'll talk about Miami in a bit, though, they deserve credit, but I just don't think there was a reason why Buffalo should have lost this game, except it was close, and that's all they do. They lose close games. I mean, one last thing, it has to be in the back of their head, right? Up 3 in the AFC divisional game last year, 13 seconds, and they can't win that game. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much said basically what I was going to respond to with you passing me the mic. I said it to myself actually on Saturday. It may not have been Saturday, it may have been Sunday after the game. And I was saying to myself, I haven't really remembered or recalled a time where recently the Bills won a close game. I said it to myself. I'm like, every time they win, they blowing somebody out. They looking dominant. But when the game is tight, I just can't remember. And I'm glad you brought out that stat, because I thought I was overreacting. I'm like, maybe I just forgot, but 0-8 in close games. Yeah, that's something they have to fix. And they have to be more composed and willing to, dug it out in those close games and just finish the game. I think in this game, I understand the weather and guys was dropping, but Miami, I know they're more accustomed to the heat, but they put it all out there. They was willing to die for it, for a middle of the pack week 3 game. They was willing to die for it.
Yeah, so I'll hit on Miami for a second to close this out, and I'll give my take on the question asked. I've been a little skeptical of Tua, and in this game, he showed toughness. I thought he played well, but wasn't overwhelmingly great. But as you said, the most impressive thing about Miami for me in this game was their defense. We already know on the offensive side of the ball, with a new head coach in Mike McDaniel, with the weapons they have, they should be pretty good. But it seemed like the Bills just had the ball the whole game, and the Dolphins defense bent, but they didn't break. The Bills, we know they've been going up and down the field on everyone, but Miami was able to force some clutch turnovers. They had a goal line stand, and their defense almost has to make me reevaluate them for a second in terms of being a contender in the AFC, because if Tua could just be average with a good coach in McDaniel, solid, really good skill position players, and their defense is just good, and we saw the last few years under Brian Flores, like their defense was the strength of their team, they're cooking with something, and they could be a legitimate threat in the AFC. I don't think they're the best team in the AFC right now. They do have the best record, though, so that deserves some props. I still would pick the Bills to win the division, but the gap is shrinking severely, quickly. And these two teams will play again in Buffalo. I give the Dolphins credit also because they have not been able to beat Buffalo at all. That Buffalo has been their kryptonite. You remember last year, Tua actually got hurt in the game against Buffalo. And I don't even know how he came back into that game. I know that's a little controversy going on with the NFL right now. The Dolphins say it was like a back injury but it was clearly a concussion. I don't know what's going on there. Hopefully he's able to play Thursday night against the Bengals, but we'll see. And I'm impressed that the Dolphins found a way to win in that game script. The fact that it wasn't 38-35, the fact that it just wasn't Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle just burning the depleted Bill secondary. You know, Waddle had the one big play, but that was really it. Tyreek Hill didn't really do anything in this game, and Miami still won, which is really impressive. And the reason why I have to give the Dolphins a lot of credit and reevaluate them is because I still don't think they've played their best football yet. Like that game against the Ravens, they were getting blown out after the first three quarters, and then Tua comes in the fourth quarter and just says we're not losing. And then in this game, their defense, Buffalo went right up and down the field, and still their defense makes some timely turnovers. Tua was fine. He wasn't great, but he did enough for them to win. And this Dolphin team, really since the back end of last year, they've been one of the better teams in the NFL. They have a lot of talent. And this game Thursday night against the Bengals, I'm excited for it, because if they could somehow win that game after these two huge wins the last 2 weeks, they're definitely the real deal. And I think they're a playoff team, and you definitely have to be impressed with their start, no doubt.
Yeah, just a couple things. I think when you said that Tyreek Hill really didn't do much in this game, I think from joint attention, I think he did all he needed to do. Probably not stats wise and big plays. Maybe that's what you meant. But just drawing the defense on one side, and you have it to account for him and where he's at, allowed that big play to Waddle, because I watched that play a couple of times. That was all Tyreek Hill, allowing that open space for Waddle to make that one big play. I think that's what we're going to see a lot of when it comes to Tyreek Hill, just basically drawing the attention with a occasional big play, something like what happened with Kansas City at various times, where Tyreek Hill was not a factor in some of the games that they played as far as scoring or having stat numbers. But we all know he definitely affects the game every time he's out there on the football field. I also would say this to close, because we headed for time. I would say this. We can't ignore the contributions that was made by Brian Flores, with this team, getting them to play good and establishing a culture. But I think it was needed for Mike McDaniels to come here, take the baton, and just take things to a whole nother level schematically to just put them in a great position. I'm not sure if Brian Flores, with all due respect and just congratulating everything he done for the franchise, I'm not sure, and I doubt that they will be this good with him still at coach because of this primary reason. What if last week against the Ravens, they down 28-7? I'm pretty sure I could bank money that Tua is out of that game. Okay, and Teddy Bridgewater is in that game, and we will not know how good Tua is or what he is capable of, right? And he wouldn't even know what he's capable of because his confidence is shot. Okay, so I think that alone, Mike McDaniels have confidence in Tua, and I'm not even sure if it's confidence in Tua, but he has confidence enough in his own play calling to put Tua in a position where he can be comfortable.
Yeah, and Brian Flores was not a Tua guy. That's on the record. We've known that for a while now. We don't even know if Brian Flores wanted to draft him going back to that 2020 draft. And you could see the team's energy and the vibe around Miami. It's much different with McDaniel compared to Flores. Things just look much more positive vibes out there in Miami. So I'm excited for this Thursday night game. Should be good.
And we'll see what happened with Tua and that whole concussion, back injury. The Dolphins been breaking rules, clearly. Stephen Ross and everything going on. So it won't be out of the ballpark that they broke these rules today. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back after the break. Keep it locked.